listening to Themes and Memes, a different kind of movie review. I'm your host, Aaron, and here with me is my co-host, Adam. How you doing, Adam?
I'm well, Aaron. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, good as always. Coming off our last review of Exit Through the Gift Shop, I'm feeling good about that past review, and we're moving right into a new film, another indie. Is this an indie film? Adam, I'll just ask you off the bat. Could it be called that properly?
Yeah, I think that would be an accurate description of it. I mean, it was produced by the Scotts, so Ridley Scott and Tony Scott. And I think, Scott-Free Productions did that, and I think Fox did the distribution, I'm pretty sure.
Searchlight, that's right, it was Fox Searchlight.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the indie version of Fox, yes. Yeah. So it's independent, but of course, it gets the help from the big money and the establishment people. I mean, you have to get the movie out there, and this film is titled The East. Yeah. Came out in 2013, is that right?
That is correct, yep, that's right. Mm-hmm. So this is directed by a guy called Zal Batmanglij, or I don't know how you say it.
I don't know. Yeah, I saw that name. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Batmanglij. I'm not sure. We'll put it up in the notes, but it's an Indian guy, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, the production credits, like we were saying, Scott Freed with Tony Scott and Ridley Scott. That's noteworthy. I mean, do we want to get into that, or should we talk about that later, Adam?
Well, I guess we could talk about that later.
We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that.
But this is an interesting film. It kind of ties into a lot of the other films we've done recently. So if people cast their minds back to films like The Wicker Man to a degree, but more so. Things like Imperium that we did with Jay Dyer.
Oh yeah, very much like that. Yeah. With the storyline, the main character being an intelligence agent, an operative working on the inside. Very much like an Imperium.
Exactly, yeah. But this is, I guess, the other side of the spectrum, because in Imperium, what we saw was an FBI agent infiltrating a far-right group, a group of neo-Nazis. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this story, what we see is a intelligence agent infiltrating a far-left group. So this far left group is called the East, and so I guess what we'll do here is I will run through a synopsis, of the plot and everything like that, and then you can chime in with whatever as we go along, Aaron. And then once we've done that, we can just kind of talk further about observations and reflections and whatever else comes up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let these people know what this movie is all about here, Adam.
Indeed. So the film starts out with us being introduced to the character of Jane. Now, this is played by Brit Marling. People may be familiar with her. She's a young actress who's on the up and up right now. She's been in a lot of independent films. She actually co-wrote this story as well starring in it. So, I actually rate her quite highly as an actor. But anyway, she's showing being interviewed for a special assignment with her employer, who are called Hiller Brood. Now, they are a private corporate intelligence firm. Interesting name. I think the name Hiller Brood was kind of interesting. I'm not sure quite what to make of it, but it sounds exactly like you would expect a private intelligence firm to sound like, doesn't it?
Yeah, a lot of these indie films get the names so good, or a lot of these films just like nail it on these corporation, military-industrial complex company names. Remember Chappie, whatever the name of the...
Tetraval.
That was like the perfect name. I'm like, man, if I didn't know this was a movie, I'd think that was a real company. I don't know how they do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've seen a number of these, I guess, more independent films that do they get the realism really accurate, don't they? When they're talking about, as you say, military, industrial, corporations and maybe news agencies or things that would reflect, how these companies would appear in the real world. So yeah, very well done in that respect. But
Hiller Brood. It just sounds like two people's names who might have started a company, but also like there's connotations what those names mean too.
Yeah, the name Brood is kind of interesting.
Yeah, Brood, definitely.
Yeah, but I guess maybe we can return to that. But so the assignment that she's being interviewed for is to infiltrate a radical eco-terrorist group who call themselves the East. Now, this group have been staging a number of kind of, attacks on these high-profile corporations in order to highlight both the human and the environmental cost of their corruption. So, these are like big pharma companies or, big industrial corporations who have been involved in, environmental damage or wage slavery or sweatshops or whatever it is, it's that kind of thing. And they're involved in
There's a big oil company right in the beginning.
Oh, yeah,
right?
the oil
and they
company.
Showed like an oil spill,
That's
the classic
right.
oil spill footage
With the birds. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's the classic sort of environmental concerns that they're highlighting, but they go about it through direct action. So they what they do is they have sort of like an eye for an eye type philosophy where they stage these attacks that directly harm the executives or the employees of that corporation, and they do it in such a way so as to reflect the actual crimes they've committed. So we can get into more of the details as the synopsis goes on, but they basically make them suffer in a way that they've made their victims suffer. So that's the whole kind of principle of the East and what they do. But after Jane, she's Jane at this stage. After Jane showcases her extensive research into both the group, the East, and its kind of underpinning philosophy, she's given the assignment. So the boss gives you the assignment and says, right, you've got it. You go and do this. And so Jane assumes the identity of Sarah. So she changes her name to Sarah, and
there you go. Yeah.
She does the usual thing where she gets into scruffy clothes and sort of puts on some dirty shoes.
She rides a bike.
Yeah, all that stuff. So she's essentially like she's basically making inroads into like a sort of like a local underground of like I guess nomads and drifters. Those.
Yeah, they're like tramp culture. They call it ride in the rails type people who do that. She gets right in there. It's actually literally riding the rails and getting beat up by bulls and all this stuff. That's a very real thing. People do that. There's all sorts of little subcultures, little groups of and communities of people that do that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was very realistic in the way that they showed her. I guess going on this journey and meeting these people. I mean, these are the kinds of people that you probably have seen in your travels at some point, or you probably have maybe perhaps even met at some point.
I've known people who've done this. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, me too.
And you see people walk in the street with backpacks. Sometimes they'll be dressed like punks. Sometimes they'll just be dressed in whatever. But you can tell they've been riding the rails, dumpster diving, doing all that stuff, and they're gonna sleep in a tent or on the street or whatever that night. Yeah,
exactly. So it's these types of people that she's starting to hang out with, and as you say, she's traveling and she's on these trains with people, and she's camping out with them on the beach and all this kind of stuff. And obviously, through doing this, she's hoping to eventually locate members of the East. So she is she's trying to be fairly inconspicuous about it, but she's kind of giving off signals, so to speak, and sort of trying to pull off certain moves and put out certain vibes to try and attract the people she's looking for, and kind of convince them that she's looking for them in a way, or that she's one of them. I guess just trying to fit into that kind of culture as much as she can, right?
Yeah. She's doing what she can to find the East, and when she hears mention of them, she follows the leads.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just I should note that meanwhile she's left a long-term boyfriend back home, so I'm not sure exactly where. Are they based in Washington D.C.? Is that where they are?
Yeah. They're within the Beltway area. They're either Maryland or Virginia, or actually in D.C. It seemed like Maryland or Virginia they were living in.
Yeah, that whole area of a government area, I suppose.
Actually, I'll make a quick note that I really love this film in terms of the locations, because they film a lot in that area, and they get in the woods later, and I'm from around there originally, so I've spent a lot of time in and around DC and just in the woods back east, the east of the U.S. You know what I mean? And to me, it's always nice to see a film that does that, because usually you're filming in L.A. or wherever,
West Coast,
and it just has a totally different feeling, and I love the woods in the East, and this film features that prominently. So it's just, for me, I enjoyed that.
It's yeah. I mean, it's good. The aesthetic of all of that is very different to what we're used to in a lot of films. Because as you say, often things are shot in LA or in California somewhere.
Yeah.
It's all sunny and flat, and instead here we're dealing with
the woods look nothing like they do back east. The ones out here. I mean, we have the redwood forests and stuff up north, but
it's a bit different.
Again, they look completely different. It's a totally different kind of forest. So
yeah.
So I noticed that. I don't know. I like that.
So yeah, she's so Sarah is traveling amongst these nomads, and she's again, as I said, giving off the right signals and trying to put out the right vibes. And she eventually, on a train, meets a character called Luca, I think his name is. And they get into a bit of a scuffle with security, and they're chased and all this type of stuff. And she, I think she stands up for him or something against the security guards, or she.
Yeah, she somehow lets him get away. I forget exactly how it works, but she allows him to get away. She's stuck there cuffed, but she works her way out too, and then they meet up later in a van.
That's right.
And he picks her up in a van. They tear out of there.
Well, he picks her up in a van, feeling sorry for her, feeling some kind of sense of obligation because she's helped him, and she realizes that he is in fact a member of the East because he sees, like, I think is it a compass with the arrow pointing east, a little hanging from the dashboard.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because the compass wasn't actually moving. Yeah, it was just stuck to the east. Sure, yeah.
So she sees that, and figures out that, right, this guy's a member of the East, and so she thinks, well, this is my chance, and I've got to get in there, and so she cuts herself with a aluminium can, and then he sees it, of course, and says, oh gosh, we've got to get you some help, and he invites her back to the East's headquarters, which is this little kind of abandoned cottage in the woods where all these guys and girls are living, right? So she's the other members of the East are initially suspicious of her, and they're like, who is this person? Can we trust them? What are they doing here? And this guy Luca's like, oh no, she helped me. She we need to help her. She's injured, and so they get the doctor to look at her cut and all this type of stuff. But
one of them is a doctor named Doc. He happens to be a doctor. Yeah, that comes in handy.
It is. Yeah, very, yes. But the kind of stuff they're doing, absolutely. But the leader is they've kind of got two leaders, I guess. You've got the character of Benji, played by Alexander Skarsgård, and the other, I guess, the sort of the other leader, I guess, which is the character of Ezzy, who's played by Ellen Page. And those two are initially very suspicious, as I said, of Sarah. And they basically say to her, look, you've got to leave within 2 days. We'll give you shelter for a couple of nights. You can let your wounds heal, but then you've got to go. But I guess when a moment of sympathy causes Sarah to reveal her identity to one of the other members, and this is done by sign language, as one of the other members of the East is deaf or dumb, and so Sarah has to communicate with her in sign language. And she feels sorry for her, and eventually just kind of blows her cover and said, look, I'm a cop, I'm undercover here, you've got to leave or you're going to get arrested. And so this girl takes off, and they're found missing the next morning, of course. And so because this girl is no longer with them, Sarah is subsequently recruited to fill her position in the next jam. And when I say jam, basically this is like their direct action attack thing. I think that's an old
I wanted to ask what you thought. Yeah, what do you think of that term, jam?
Well, I don't know anything about it, but apparently it is just it's like historical parlance for direct action. So this is the term they use in in activist groups, in I guess extremist groups, and in the underground, whatever if they're going to do something like this, they call it a jam. So I don't know where it came from, but this is kind of established lingo, if you will.
But it's true to life. I didn't look it up. I'm like, I wonder if that's actually used, because I wasn't sure if it was or not.
Neither was I.
Term.
Yeah, no, that's exactly why I looked it up, because I thought that's kind of weird, the word jam.
It makes sense. It makes me think of like jamming the machine, like throwing a wrench in the machine and jamming it so it stops.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, sabotage.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. But so that is an established kind of theme or lingo, if you will.
Oh, cool.
But so this jam that they're they need Sarah to take part in is basically against a big pharma company. So this big pharma company is basically been accused or is suspected of selling mass marketing medications which are known to be poisonous and which cause some kind of like neurological breakdown or something. And so what they do is they all sort of they plan it out and they don costumes and all the rest of it, and they all infiltrate this cocktail party. I think it's on board a boat, a yacht or something. And
well, they start out on a yacht, but then they go on shore. There's a yacht in the beginning.
Oh, that's right.
I feel like they go on shore.
You know
right?
what it is? The yacht is one of the executives, and Sarah seduces him to try and get something from him. You know, like a key or something crucial. You know, from him. I think he goes on. She goes on to his yacht to seduce him and to I don't know what she does. I can't remember. She poisons him or gives him some Rohypnol, or she needs to get something from him anyway. But you're right. They do go back on land into this cocktail party thing. And so what we see the cocktail party where it's a big bunch of like high profile corporate execs and like generals and military industrial people, all this type of stuff. You know, the kind of it's like a military industrial big pharma cocktail party essentially, isn't it? And so you know the jam involves basically literally putting this tainted medication into the champagne glasses.
That's right. It's their actual medication which causes neuronal damage of some kind, and they just put it in the champagne. Yeah,
because there had previously been a public relations campaign on the internet, which they show you in the film, whereby the big pharma company is saying, "Oh, this is nonsense. Our medication is totally safe," and like one of the executives like takes it in front of the camera, like, "Look, I'm fine," all this type of stuff, you know. And so their revenge against that is to go and stick it in the cocktail glasses and make them drink a full dose of it, if they claim that it's so safe. And so things get a bit hairy, but ultimately they do get away with it. And the next day we see, well, within the next week or something, we see these executives coming forward on the internet saying, it turns out that this medication is actually a bit dangerous, and they're obviously very sick. They're getting worse. They have literally been poisoned, and they look to be dying.
Yeah, and they're saying that their mind isn't the same. Like, I don't feel like the same person.
Oh yeah, she's all slow, isn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I'm just not how I used to be, and all that sort of stuff. So proving the point that yes, the eco-terrorists were correct in saying that this drug causes harm. There you go. Here's proof. Yeah,
that's the proof. I mean, the executive comes on the camera and she's like, she looks like she's punch drunk or something. She's slurring her words and she looks all depressed, and it's amazing. But so as a result of this jam, Sarah comes to consider both the corruption of the corporations and the effectiveness in the East in exposing it, and so she ends up questioning the moral righteousness of her position, as an informant.
Yeah, so much of the film has to do with her inner struggle, and it goes like back and forth between the two worlds. Her workaday world, which is in intelligence, working for his private company, and living with her boyfriend who she now never sees, and then her life, which has become her the world she's infiltrating, the East, where she's making inroads and making real relationships with the people there. Very similar to, again, what we saw in Imperium. You have to make actual relationships with the people that you're spying on, otherwise it doesn't work. So it's a tough business.
And this is where the character development really comes in, as you say, because we see this inner struggle really manifesting itself in a lot of ways. So she is on one level she's bonding with the members of the East and their bonding rituals, which involve these these kind of ceremonies that around eating, where they put each other in straitjackets and then they go feed each other with a wooden spoon. So one person, they're all sitting around a table wearing straitjackets, so they can't actually grab their spoons with their hands. And so what they do is they grab the spoon with the mouth, put it into the food, and then feed the person next to them. So everybody's feeding a person to the right, or what have you.
Communal
eating experience. Yeah. And when they first do this, Sarah tries to participate in it, and she just has no clue as to what's actually going on and what the point is. And this highlights her own, I guess, kind of selfishness to both her and the group. Whereas at this point in the film, after participating in the jam, she's now much more comfortable with all of that. And it also, this is juxtaposed with like you mentioned, the life she's left back home, where she started out as a very kind of sheltered, conservative Christian. She shows her listening to Christian radio, and
shows her wearing the University of Maryland shirt, so she's just out of school. She's doing all the right stuff. She's applying for the big job. She gets it. She's winning.
Yeah, exactly.
She's succeeding. She's succeeding in the straight world, or whatever you'd call it if you yourself were a tramp. I think they refer to it as like straight world or something like that.
But yeah, exactly. She's the epitome of all of that. And it's shown that early on in the process, she's kind of questioning them on their actions, saying, is it necessary for you to do this, or what about the people you're hurting, and can't you just, if these medications are, tainted, then can't you just write to the press or something like that? And they are all essentially laughing at her naivety and saying, well, do you really believe that these big corporations would simply stop what they're doing because it's wrong? And after actually participating in the jam, she's now beginning to question all of that, to question her straight-edge life and her kind of naive conservative lifestyle and worldview, and she's actually starting to think, well, maybe this group is in the right, maybe my position is the wrong position,
Yeah, this is interesting when you think of the similarities between The Wicker Man that we did a few movies back, in the sort of initiations and the ritual side of the East. They do all kinds of the rituals. Again, like the eating is the one thing, but then they'll come across a dead deer in the woods, and they kind of have this sacramental thing where they all sit over it and they pull out the innards, and they're talking about how they're going to eat it and that sort of thing. Trying to get back to a way of life like the natives would have lived thousands of years ago in the same exact spot that they're on there in the woods. And very much pagan too. I mean, pagan world doing similar things. So, and this the main character in this is a female, whereas the main character was a male in Wicker Man. So maybe just the fact that she's a female makes her a little more willing to accept these things. Which that's
a possibility.
Sexist to say that?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean, there's depends on which way you look at it, I guess. But I would agree with that. I mean, I think females generally tend to be more open to different points of view and perhaps change than males. So
but overall, we made the point in Wicker Man that the whole pagan world was matriarchal and more focused on the feminine side of things. Yeah, and so this big blustery guy coming in just couldn't fit into that.
Well, his resistance was typically male, wasn't it? In every way. Whereas
he never gave up his resistance. Where there's more give and take. There's constant give and take in here, and she's got this dialogue in her own mind, like, well, what am I going to do? And as soon as that dialogue starts, you're not just gonna like keep thinking what you used to.
No, well, you started on a path, and that path is going to go somewhere. You can't just stop. So excuse me, but so where are we? So this jam has been successful. Sarah is now questioning everything. Essentially, she's finding that her life back home is completely incompatible with her undercover life in the East. She's growing estranged from her boyfriend, and who eventually leaves her. He walks out in the end because it's like, I didn't even know you anymore, and because she's sleeping on the floor and all this type of stuff.
Yeah, sleep on the floor. He never sees her for months anywhere, and then
she doesn't say anything.
Back, it's that. Yeah.
And it's an interesting character that she plays in this film as well, because it kind of reflects the characters that Brit Marling plays in a lot of other films as well, which is somebody who's hiding a lot, somebody who doesn't say a lot and who's hiding a lot. Mm-hmm. You can just tell by looking at them that they're hiding a lot. And I think that came across fantastically for this particular character, just the actor herself. When she is playing this character, it's perfect. It's perfectly suited to the role, because we see her trying to interact with her boyfriend back home, and they're kind of sitting in clean clothes in this kind of sterile looking apartment. Everything's white and clean, and they're watching TV, and and she's just like sitting there staring off into the distance.
And he'll, to make things better, he'll like mention spaghetti and meatballs or something like so. Like, his way to try to like get things back to normal is to talk about eating spaghetti. Yeah. It's like, man, dude, spaghetti's not going to cut it. Man, you gotta come in here with something better than that.
Exactly, yeah.
She goes out running on her daily run. She breaks down crying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I'll add in another note on women in that she co-wrote this as a woman. You definitely get that. You can tell that a woman wrote this, and I very much appreciate it. I mean, I think it's written in a way that a man wouldn't have, and it's better in so many ways. The fact that it has a woman's touch. I don't know.
The struggle.
I like that.
I think the struggle of the character, is expressed in a typically feminine way. These are the struggles that we see, I guess, related to a lot of film that involve women and, to do with relationships and a conflict and choices and all that kind of stuff, and I think you're right. I think that those elements to do with the conflict, to do with the confused heart, they came out really well and were sort of, well treated because of that. So, I agree.
Yeah. And you don't always... you don't always get a female writer, and it's a nice change of pace. I really do mean that, and I appreciate it for that.
But the struggle in her relationship is only compounded by the fact that she is developing feelings for Benji. This leader. He's quite enigmatic. He doesn't really speak a lot during the course of the film. He's a man of few words, but he's definitely sees himself as a leader and is very much in control. So as she's bonding and developing sympathies for the rest of the group, she's also developing feelings for him, and they eventually consummate their feelings for one another, in a moment of passion. So, so this character development, continues on, and I think through the course of the film, we're also finding out that each member of the East has been personally harmed, or injured in some way by the actions of the corporations that they're targeting. So everybody's got a personal motive to be there. And this, of course, only deepens her sympathies for them and her kind of, I guess, sympathy for the cause in general.
Yeah.
But
makes it personal.
Yeah.
Because it's not real. All these conspiracies, or whatever you want to call them, they're not real until you see the real life effects of them.
This is true.
It's like you need real life evidence, and well, there you go. Here's living, breathing proof. And Doc got poisoned by this medicine. Now he's got all these problems.
Yeah,
there you have it.
And that's the big shock for her, because she's been living on the straight and narrow in this kind of straight edge, clean cut world. She's never been exposed to any real harm or any real struggle or conflict or anything like that, so she doesn't believe it actually exists. And so when she's confronted with the very real victims of faceless corporations, it's a real shock to her. And this, I think, is probably the thing that the single biggest thing that prompts the I guess the change of heart within her is actually getting to know these characters through the ritual and the ceremony, and learning about how how they've been really like damaged or scarred for life, by the actions of these companies. I mean, I think, what was the story with Doc? He was exposed to some kind of medication.
He was working like in the Peace Corps or some other international group like that. And for his work, no, he had to prescribe the medication to, what was it, his sister or his brother?
That's right, his brother.
He prescribed it to the brother, and then the brother started having all these problems. So then he prescribed it to himself, and he started having all these problems. It was this drug that they specifically use overseas for that kind of work.
That's right. And didn't he want to prove to himself and to his brother that the drug was safe, and that's the reason that he took it himself? Wasn't it something like that?
I think so. I think it was implied. He's like, he couldn't believe that it was the drug at first, so he took it, and then the same thing happened to him, and that was that. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was, if not stated, then at least implied, that it was some kind of like his own need to prove that the drug company innocent was the very thing that caused him to become ill and take up this role in the East. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But things continue on, and we lead up to the next jam that they're planning. So this one involves another big pharma company who've been dumping their waste into some kind of a public lake. It was a waterway or a lake or a river or something.
Yeah, I think it was a lake.
Yeah. And so they go and start this thing, and it's revealed pretty early on that the CEO of this company is actually Izzy's father. So the character of Izzy, this is her father. They've been estranged for years, obviously, and so they approach him in a restaurant, and she has this kind of big, weepy, kind of heart-to-heart moment with him, saying, how can you do these things, and how can you be so selfish and corrupt, and don't you care? And he's just all cynical to her, saying, oh, you're just a bum, what is it? You come here needing more money or something like that, and it goes pretty horribly.
Yeah, it doesn't go well.
No.
She ends up jabbing him with a hypodermic needle filled with knockout juice, whatever it is.
Yeah, so the members of the East are like they're kind of working undercover as waiters in this restaurant or whatever it is, and so she stabs him with a needle and he's knocked out, and then so they all grab him and stick him in a van with his girlfriend or his wife or something, and so the plan is to take him down to this waterway where his company's been dumping this waste, and get him to swim in it, And
him and this other female CEO. So there's the two of them they have.
Oh, I thought she might have been a wife. Oh, she's a female CEO, is she? Okay.
Yeah, she was definitely a CEO. Maybe was he? I forget what his role was, the father. But they both had high up roles in this corporation.
Yeah, they were both execs of some level. But yes, so they're down on the lake of this river or what have you, and the East are filming, and I think they've got them at gunpoint or something, saying, look, you get in this river, or that's it, and we want to film you getting in this river, and he's trying to argue his innocence and say, look, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't know what's going on here, but once they really threaten him, he says, look, okay, I'll admit it, and so on camera he does admit that that yes, this is where we dump the waste at 3 o'clock in the morning every morning. You can't swim in it, you'll get sick. But before they can proceed much further, security guards have tracked them, and they turn up, and
the woman's like, we had a they fall in the lake at 3 o'clock when all the waste is coming out. So don't see the effects of what happens to that later, actually, but I guess you just have to assume what might happen.
Yeah, I think the implied idea is that it may not necessarily kill you going in the lake, but chances are if you go in there, you're going to get pretty sick. She ends up actually falling in, but before much else can happen, there's a big kerfuffle. Security arrives, and Izzy is shot during the escape. So she gets a bullet to the abdomen or something, and they rush her back to the house, to the headquarters, and the doc does what he can for her, and I think he does get rid of the bullet, but the damage has been done, unfortunately.
He somehow had wiggly hands. Like I think it was because of his neuronal damage, and then Sarah had to step in and finish the operation. So it's symbolic there too that she had to. She literally pulled the bullet out of Izzy, and she was the one that did it.
That's right.
So
I forgot about that.
Talk about bonding there.
True.
There you have it.
Yeah, no, it was actually a couple of weeks ago since I last watched the film, so I forgot about that. But that's very well pointed out because he's suffering some kind of neurological thing or anxiety or something, and so she actually has to do the physical cutting and sewing while he's there
instructing her, like, okay, cut a 1/4 inch, cut it this way. Now put your hand in this way and pull it out.
Yeah. So, as you say, very, very symbolic that she takes on that role for that at that point, because up until that point, and I guess throughout the course of most of the film, Izzy had been, overtly suspicious towards Sarah. That the two hadn't really bonded so much. There'd always been a sort of a very guarded, kind of cold attitude between them. But unfortunately, she ends up dying anyway. So the bullet's done its damage. And they hold a funeral for her outside in the woods where they bury her body, and it's quite sad. But where are we next? So
what does happen after that?
I'm just trying to think about what happens.
Remember, this is where things really start picking up. I feel. Is this where she's like going back to report to her company more of her findings? And
right.
She's constantly doing that.
She does that. That's right. She does do that at a number of points throughout the film. She returns to Hillebrook to speak to her boss, and she's impressing the boss and the client, of course. The clients.
But each time she does it, she's getting more and more fed up with the whole deal at Hiller Brood, and she can tell that her boss, the woman who's the CEO or the founder of the company or whatever, she's just doing it for the money, and she doesn't really care, and she wants to get clients, just get the money out of them. She doesn't even ultimately care if she's making their companies more secure. She just wants a contract. So she's seeing how silly this whole thing is, and she's just getting fed up with it more and more each time.
That's right. And towards the end of the film, when she's going back to report, it becomes apparent to us, the audience, that she is obviously very, very conflicted and unhappy about what she's doing, and what's interesting about that is that you would think that her boss, being a senior intelligence analyst or director or what have you, would pick up on this. She would pick up on the misgivings of one of her underlings or what have you. And
she is picking up on it, though, I feel, because she keeps like, every time, like one of the early times, the boss is like, okay, I know you're developing feelings for them, but don't, basically, even if it were white supremacists, you'd have feelings for them. Just throw that away and get the job done. All right.
Yeah, I remember that now. I guess what I was trying to say was that there were, I think I recall there were points at which it became much more obvious that she had split loyalties, like very directly.
Oh God, that last one.
The last one. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this? What is her boss thinking here? Why doesn't she pick up on this? Does she not want to see it? Is that it?
But no. But she does pick up on the last one, because again, the boss had been implying, like, hey, look, don't become one of them, all right? And then Sarah's there saying, hey, look, yeah, everything's okay. And then she starts spouting off basically propaganda for the East, and she pulls
an apple out of the trash can.
She pulls an apple out of the trash and starts eating it, and totally blows her own cover. And the boss is like, okay, yeah, I get it. She's totally become one of them. And to me, I just felt the boss realized then. And then security stops her on the way out, of course, and takes her phone, which she had used to gather intel for the East.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're probably correct in your memory of the film. I seem to recall at that point that I remember her basically blowing it, as you said, like grabbing the ash can. What am I saying? The apple out of the trash can. And eating it and saying, "Oh, this is wasteful. How could you do this?" And this is in a corporate environment. Everyone's looking at her like, "Oh God, that's so gross." And I guess my memory was of the boss thinking, "Oh, she's putting on a little play for me. This is her like acting out her character or something."
See, to me, it was like, okay, the boss now, her suspicions that she had before were confirmed. Like, yep, she became one of them. And then there you go. You hear all these voices on the walkie-talkie, like, she's coming onto the main lobby. You hear that in the background.
Okay.
And she stopped for security, which had never happened to her before. Usually it was right there, like, oh, hello, Jane, how you doing? And it's like, no, we have to keep your phone. Sorry.
Well, let's explain to the audience how we actually get to that point. So just to recap, Sarah's developing feelings for Benji. They've gotten together at least at one point. She's really committed to the East. She's broken up with her old boyfriend. Everything. She's basically one of them now, and because of this, she's still very, very concerned and has reservations about the actions that the East take. That's very dangerous. They're causing direct harm to people. And she says to Benji, "Well, look, why didn't you run off? Why don't me and you just leave? We could go and do something a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more down to earth, constructive together. Something less
destructive.
Yeah, exactly. Something less like radical and reactionary or violent and what have you. But of course, he says, absolutely not. I've got a jam planned. The next big jam, in fact, the biggest jam we will ever pull off is being planned, and I need you for it. So the two of them jump in the car together and head off to pull off this jam, which is interesting because it's just the two of them. So Sarah falls asleep in the car, and she wakes up in the morning or a few hours later or what have you, and they're approaching Hillebrood's offices. And she turns to Benji. Like,
she looks out the window and she sees this scene that she sees when previously in the film she was going back home to see her boyfriend and stuff. Well, you see the same thing, but he's there. It's like, well, how did he know this? And he's taking her there, right?
He's taking her to her employer, and she looks at him, and he just looks back at her and explains to her that, look, I always suspected that you were an undercover operative. The guy that brought you in, Luca, he suspected as well. And we basically were expecting you, and this is part of the whole whole deal here, that we anticipated you coming in as an infiltrator, and we always intended that if you were an infiltrator, we were going to use you to pull off a jam against Hillebrood, because part of the East's philosophy is this this kind of eye for an eye strategy again. So that one of the
spy on us, we'll spy
on us, and we'll spy on you. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that comes up a number of times in the film, and this is the big
this is
finale.
the consummation of that. Yeah. It's like, okay, we're gonna spy on the spies now. Gotta get the intel on them.
So Benji explains to Sarah that what your job is to go into Hillebrood, into the offices there, and actually steal a list of all of their agents, all of their undercover NOC agents from around the world. So people, all of the people who they've got embedded into various activist groups, and give it to us so that we can expose them. And
or if not exposed, just use it for their own advantage somehow.
Yeah, or use it for their advantage. I think
use it for their own intelligence purposes.
I think the implication was that he wanted to expose them, but either way, it's to use it for their own advantages,
or kill them, maybe. I don't know.
Possibly, but yeah, I mean,
but he sends her up there. She goes in. And she goes in, and she gets all this. She takes photos with her camera of all the ID badges of everybody off of the screen. That's what she does, right?
I think that's how she does it. Yeah.
And then when she leaves the office from doing that, she's confronted by her boss, which we were talking about with the Apple scene and all that, and things get crazy because she just basically stormed up in there, and she was trying to get the boss to come down to talk to her, like telling the secretary guy that it was an emergency.
Oh, the boss is in a meeting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then she actually comes out of the meeting, out of an elevator, goes, "Okay, what's so important you had to talk to me here?" And then, they go banter back and forth. I forget about what, but then she does the whole thing with eating the apple. And the boss is like, okay, I see what's going on here. And then she gets stopped by security on the way out, who take her phone. But she was actually being a good intel agent because she had anticipated that happening. It's almost like she meant to have the Apple scene to call attention to herself so that they take the phone. But she had taken the SIM card out. Was that what happened?
The SIM card, she'd taken it out and put it between her teeth or something like that from memory. Or their mouth.
Right? She put it in a dental floss container, which she swallowed. Was it?
That's something like that. It was something like I remember her mouth was involved somehow.
Yeah. She put it in a dental floss container, swallowed it, and then later takes it out when she needs it.
Yeah, that's right. And so she comes back out to the car park, where Benji's waiting for her, and they tear off together. And she says, "Well, look, sorry, I didn't actually get the list. I couldn't get it out. Security grabbed my phone. We failed." And at this point, it's revealed that I can't remember the exact reasons for this, but I think that the heat is on the East. They realize now, and so they've already planned to go their own separate ways. Benji's, I think, taking off to Mexico, was he, or going somewhere?
The house was getting raided by the FBI while they were doing this. The house they had all been living in was raided.
That's right. Whilst they were in Hillebrood, whilst this was all going on, the FBI had stormed the house. That's right. Yeah, and so they'd. I can't remember. Do the other members get arrested, or do they escape?
You know what? Some had already left. Like Luca had already left on grounds of he was sick of doing it. But I think I feel like Doc got arrested. I can't remember actually.
Doc was arrested.
Foggy.
I remember a scene of Doc being arrested. I can see it in my head. Yeah, he was arrested. Of course, Benji is smart enough to not be there when it happens. And that kind of maybe hints a little bit at how much he knew and what his plans were all along.
Yeah, sure.
It is revealed essentially. Well, I guess we come to know that he is a pretty a fairly narcissistic character in a lot of ways. He's very, 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 very driven and ambitious, but I think is more about himself. Than anything else.
The death of Izzy doesn't sway him in his revolutionary goals. It's just just another thing. You gotta crack egg to make an omelet. That's sort of philosophy.
Yeah, they have a big kind of argument after Izzy's dead, So all of the other members are saying, "Oh, this has gone too crazy. We can't keep doing this if people are going to die." And he's just like, "No, this is the cost of war. And we got to keep going." And
and that's why Luca had left. He's like, "Man, forget this."
That's right. You're absolutely right. That's exactly how it happens. But I think yes. So Benji is taking off into the sunset on his own, and they have a conversation as he's getting on a bus, and Sarah says, "Look, I can't do things the way you do them. I've come to sympathize with your cause. I think you are morally in the right here, in terms of what you're objecting to, but I don't agree with the way that you go about it. I don't agree with this kind of this targeting of people and the violence and the poisoning and all that kind of stuff. I just can't do that." And so that's the end of that. He goes off, and she goes on her own way, and
he takes some sort of big rig across the Mexican border was the idea.
That was it. Yeah, exactly. He'd already organized for to be smuggled into Mexico somehow.
Yeah, so they pull up to this truck wash, and he has the truck waiting for him somehow.
Yeah.
He just pulls out of the truck wash to go into Mexico.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So it's obvious that he's been planning this for a while, and that he knew what was happening. He knew that he would not be able to go back to the house. He knew that once he'd obtained the list, he would probably have to part ways with her, and all that kind of stuff. So she is then shown. So Sarah was then shown, resuming her own life, and she actually has retained the list. So she
Yep.
Despite telling Benji that she hasn't got it, she actually does have it. And so what she does is actually uses that list to contact the other Hillebrood agents independently and directly. And she starts trying to convince them. So instead of targeting them or exposing them or hurting them, she simply contacts them and says, "Hey, I used to be one of you. I was an undercover agent, but I came to see the light, and this is corrupt. We can't do this. And do you know about this and that and all the rest of it?" And trying to speak to their conscience. And that's basically where the film ends.
So she gets them to do similar stuff on the inside of their undercover work to expose the bad guys who are part of the system, right? But that's what was implied, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So instead of exposing the identities of the other undercover agents, she tries to implore them to expose the people that they're working for.
Yeah, so a different methodology there that ends up working actually a lot better.
Yeah, it does. But,
pretty interesting. Interesting ideas here. All sorts of interesting ideas that make you wonder in this movie.
There is, and there's a lot going on. I would just apologize to the audience there for remembering this film really badly because I don't know. I've seen
it's
it a few.
Confusing one. It's confusing. Certain details I had trouble with. I'm like, no, wait a minute. What exactly happened? It was only afterwards. I'm like, oh, okay. Through inference, okay, that's what ended up happening. I had to think about it twice.
Well, it's the way that a lot of these independent films are made, and I love the way they do this. This is my preferred style of film. Actually, is there's not a lot of announcement. The scripting is often fairly minimal. Things are implied more than anything else, so you've got to figure it out yourself. The communication is done through symbology, through imagery, through inference, rather than explanation and exposition. So I actually enjoy that, But
it wastes a lot less time, and you can tell more of a story that way. So,
you can tell a much more complex and nuanced story if you leave words out of the picture, and. People to sort of come to their own individual conclusions through different styles of communication. So again, I really like that style of filmmaking, but it does make it a little bit hard to remember sometimes because my memory of what happened at what point in time, even after seeing the film fairly recently, is still kind of disjointed. So
Yeah, I mean, it made me wonder watching the film how often this happens in intelligence circles of all stripes. How often especially with operatives going on the inside of these groups, how often they, get initiated in these groups and actually become part of that group and leave whatever their intelligence agency or whatever they work for behind as a result. I wonder how often this actually happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I guess it's hard to say because a lot of the time we'll either never know or we'll be given a story which is, some kind of like a publicity spin campaign by an intelligence agency to cover the fact that one of their agents is turned,
or you just know, you never know. Like you first said, that happens more often than not, I would assume.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the world of intelligence is full of, double agents and triple agents, but I think a lot of the time what we hear about more often than that is people who perhaps not so much ideologically conflicted or have split loyalties or anything like that, but more people who are just more like narcissistic and opportunistic, who were taking a paycheck from every side that was willing to pay them, and giving information to everybody, that seems to come up quite a bit. I think more so than people who are genuinely conflicted and
that have a moral compass and all that.
I mean, we did see it in the Cold War. This has been documented on numerous occasions throughout the Cold War with on both sides, with defectors from the Soviet Union coming to the United States or communist subversives within Western nations, defecting over to the Soviet Union, what have you. But of course, it's full of intrigue and questions, and we don't really know, what the real story was, and how much was politics and money and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good to, again, compare this movie to Imperium, which we recently reviewed with guest Jay Dyer. In that film, we had an FBI agent infiltrating a far-right neo-Nazi group. So federal employee infiltrating a far-right group. In this, we have the employee of a private company, right?
She's former FBI, by the way.
Oh, she's former FBI?
I think that's noted at the beginning, that she's come from the FBI to Hillebrew. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, she's working in the private sector, right? Which works right alongside government. It's all the same thing anyway. But she's in the private sector, working in intelligence, and she infiltrates a far left group. So it's kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum. We're looking at a far left group, whereas in Imperium, we're looking at a far right group. And I just think it's kind of appropriate that the private sector is infiltrating the left, whereas the government was infiltrating the right. And that was just the kind of point I was trying to make there.
No, that's very interesting. And I guess what it speaks to is that anybody who drifts too far afield is going to be brought back in, or at least by some interests anyway. Because I mean, I'm sure that you would find some private interests who may even agree with what the East were doing in some way. I mean, they could never publicly support them, of course, but I mean, you do have big organizations, mostly charitable ones, that, support on some level or another this kind of direct action around the environment, and then conversely, you have the opposite side of the spectrum with, I guess, what you would call a liberal establishment, which is largely left-wing.
But it always muddies together because you look at the foundations and the people who basically put up the money. It's like the big money corporate guys. They're like, no, wait a minute, who's who here? And then you just get confused if you're looking at things from, I guess, the left-right paradigm. You just get totally confused.
Well, most people would, because it's all the same groups. I mean, the left funds the right funds the left. The center funds both. It's all it's the same foundations.
And this is all the realm of intelligence, because intelligence is all about putting out ideas for people to consume in order to confuse them. It's like, oh well, what is the real truth? Well, you being the intel agent, you go out and you tell people what the truth is. When in reality, your version of the truth is just a bunch of stuff meant to confuse people so that they don't see, so they're not able to put two and two together and see all the details and how they fit together. They just go with whatever story you're telling.
Yeah.
With your propaganda and whatnot.
And they'll use whatever methods work to achieve that. And I mean, I suppose it speaks to the whole question of how many layers or levels of understanding you have within these interests, because on one level, you'll have, like in this film, for example, corporate interests, high-level international corporations which are concerned about groups like the East. They are far left, I guess, anarchist-type groups they've got a kind of a revolutionary ideology. It's all about waging a war on them, waging a war on corporate, capitalist criminals.
And in the film, they're killing CEOs and things like that. Yeah. So it is a very real thing that they got to worry about.
Well, it is very real, and the executives of these companies, on some level, would obviously be very, very concerned about this, and so the East would be a definite enemy for them. There would be no question about that. But I would tend to think that on some perhaps higher level, there would be an understanding that these groups can also serve a purpose. That if these groups were perhaps engaged in some other type of activity or perhaps targeting other people, they may in fact be, not supported perhaps, but but they wouldn't have such a need to try and oppose them in such a way, if you know what I mean.
If you could somehow steer their revolutionary efforts toward your corporate competition, that would work out for you.
Exactly.
That's one thing you could do.
Well, this is kind of what I was getting at, is that I'm sure I know I have in the past seen exposés, fairly anecdotal, but nonetheless, that deal with high profile corporations and high profile business interests who do actually fund radical left-wing groups to go and attack their competition.
Competition, yeah.
Or to undermine, if not to attack the competition, then to go and undermine some kind of process somewhere, or to create waves and cause a stir, and basically make, to help create a situation which is ultimately going to benefit them in the end.
Exactly. There's all sorts of different ways you could do that, but depending on where the corporation wanted to go, what they wanted to do, and what was standing in their way. So it's just a case-specific sort of thing. There's so many different ways you could do that. Now that I'm thinking about it, you know what I mean?
Well, it all comes back down to this kind of philosophy of pragmatism in the end, doesn't it? I mean, these groups will use whatever works. If a left-wing group works for them, one day if anarchists are helpful to them and if they can use them, then they'll give them money. They'll turn a blind eye. They'll support them. They'll do whatever. But as soon as they start impinging on their interests, then they become criminals and enemies. And
and they can easily take them out because they are criminals.
Exactly.
That's not tough. That was easy to get rid of you when I needed to, wasn't it?
Well, it's much like the war on terror. We look at this like groups like Al Qaeda, for example, who were public enemy number one before ISIS took the limelight. And they of course stemmed back to the Mujahideen, from Afghanistan in the 80s, where the CIA was actually funding these groups, training them, providing them with weapons to fight the Soviets.
The Cold War, get those horrible Soviets. That's right.
Exactly. So that they're funded and set up and promoted and used when it suits them, and then once once they no longer serve that purpose, then their role becomes to serve another purpose, which is the purpose of the enemy.
The film was really good in showing just how the system at large just elicits this sort of behavior from all the big players. If you want to be a big player, you have to be pragmatic in this sort of way and not really care about the real consequences of your actions. You see Izzy and her father, he refuses to admit he has done anything wrong, and he just goes about trying to make her feel bad that she's a dirty hippie or whatever. And it's not until she throws him in the river into the poison that he goes, how did it ever come to this point? Why couldn't you talk it out? It literally gets to the point where he says that. How did it get to this point? Well, it's because you just kept making excuses for stuff. Yeah. And the woman CEO who was working alongside him, she said a similar thing, we had to do it because people need electricity to power their homes, and we had to say all these lies because we had to do this in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
So, it's this is the way things work. And if you have to accept that to, again, be a big player, just keep the cogs moving, you have to be okay with that.
Well, it's all about, again, pragmatism. It's about the numbers. It's about what benefits the largest group, and usually in financial terms. So if we can provide a profitable service to a lot of people, those people appreciate the service, we make a lot of money out of it, then it's morally right to do so. And that's the philosophy of modern commerce and capitalism, essentially, that's kind of underpinned by that. So when you talk about the human fallout, the environmental fallout, the way that these things actually impact on real people's lives, it's simply a case of, well, okay, so we may have inadvertently killed 100 people, but hey, we provided electricity for 1,000, so you can't blame us.
Exactly.
It's that.
It's fun. It's Donald Trump kind of embodies this in his campaign, this sort of thought process, this point of view. He just spouts off this kind of crap all the time. Yeah. But what's also interesting is the way, conspiracy material, if you're looking at things from a conspiratorial point of view, where real conspiracies come about in this environment where, you've got all these private interests looking out to make the most money, but also, get the biggest numbers in a sense, and they'll collude with whoever they need to in order to do that. And then they'll, of course, cover it up out of their own interest. but then also it's more than just people conspiring. It's the nature of the system at large, which kind of like forces this behavior, and people kind of are too weak to resist. So if I don't know, if you're looking at things in a deep way, it really is about that. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think this is important to understanding how conspiracies breed and how they're very real. And
I totally
so many,
agree.
so many of them.
This is exactly how they operate, and this is how things like this happen. Is through, I guess, what you might call willful ignorance. It's not necessarily the conscious collusion of everybody that's involved. It's simply the ignorance and the choice to remain ignorant.
That's the way it's portrayed, like in conspiracy culture, I guess, at its worst. And sometimes people buy into that, but it's so much deeper.
Well, it's it operates on a kind of a meta level. All you need really is a few people who know what's happening and who've got the the long term, the long game in play. And everybody else just falls into line because, they've got bills to pay, they're benefiting. Hey, we're making money. This is comfortable. Yeah. I don't want to rock the boat. And if I'm not confronted with the consequences of my actions, then I've got no motivation to really question them. And that's essentially what this film is about. It's, confronting the people who are so distanced and dissociated from the consequences of their actions with the consequences and the victims of their actions, and saying, well, look, you can turn a blind eye in your comfortable life to all of this fallout, and you can distance yourself from it and say that you do nothing about it. But here it is. These are the real world effects of what you're doing. And it bridges the gap in that way. And that's what their whole philosophy is all about. And it's about saying, look, these are the real consequences. And most people, are completely oblivious to those. And this is how, as you say, this is how most conspiracies operate. The vast majority of people who are involved in them have no idea what they're doing. They're just trying to pay the bills. Yeah. They're just trying to get ahead for their own reasons. They know that if they want to build a career, if they want to have a house, if they want to have kids and a nice car and all that stuff, then there's certain questions you don't ask. You don't want to rock the boat. And if you've got no reason to. If nothing's really prompting you and provoking you to ask difficult questions and to, to sort of consider the morality of what you're doing, then you won't.
And even the people up at the top are just kind of doing things because they have no other choice too. And again, this film does a good job at portraying that. At least that's the way. That's the excuse that they give, is that it seems that way, that they don't have any other choice to keep things going.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, that's the that's the story that they give. When they're confronted, we didn't know and we couldn't do anything differently, and we had no choice, and we thought it was a non-issue and all this type of stuff. And I think that's probably true to a degree. I mean, I think it stands to reason there are plenty of people who have at least got some inkling as to the consequences of their actions. But I think for the most part, again, it comes down to willful ignorance and a sort of a culture of not asking questions. So
yeah. And this character, that Brit Marling's character, that goes by two names, that's pretty artfully done. It just shows us so well. And they do such a good job juxtaposing the different worlds, going back and forth from one world to the other. And her change throughout the film from this sort of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young girl to she changes her look too. And you can tell they intentionally made her look different in the end from the beginning. Like her hair's a different color, and like she's just putting off like a different air about her as well. And they do a good job there.
Yeah, they do. Because, as you say, she epitomizes the culture that she represents, in this film. So, as an undercover agent, as somebody who's working for the interests of big corporate interests, she's initially dressed very conservatively. She's a Christian. She's, again, shows her in the car listening to Christian radio. She's got the perfect boyfriend, the perfect apartment, and they walk the dog together and all this type of stuff. And then towards the end of
spaghetti.
And spaghetti and meatballs, probably out of a can too. And by the end of the film, she's dyed her hair. She's taken on a different name, and she's eating apples out of rubbish bins, and she's spouting off all this kind of propaganda about ecology and environmentalism and consumerism and all this type of stuff. So
some of the stuff she says is right. I mean, and I'm all for eating food out of the dumpster. We were talking about a little about this before we recorded, Adam. But I mean, I think a lot of these ideas that the East has is correct. That there's a lot of waste. There's nothing wrong with eating out of a dumpster. There's plenty of food to be found there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that the actors, we call them actors now. Females are still actors, aren't they? You're not actresses.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I think that changed a while ago. Yeah, I don't know why I'm going off on that, but she actually studied and did, I guess, method acting or research or what have you for this film. So she got into the what do you call it, the whole freeganism movement?
Yeah, she did. Well, the way I read it was that she had done like some summer where she was experimenting in freeganism, which was basically all the, the train hopping, the dumpster diving, the living
Squatting,
off the land, as you were in the modern sense. And she joined an anarchist cult. And it was based on her experiences doing that she wrote that into the script. It definitely comes across that you can tell that this is genuine because it's all very realistically portrayed. All this stuff is real, and it was well done.
Yeah, it was well done. The whole aesthetic of those scenes when she's making inroads into the kind of this kind of underground of nomads and the, what do you call it, the rail runners or the train riders or
the tramps and all that.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's very true to life. Again, it's we see people that we've probably met at some point in our lives. I mean, I personally have not done the dumpster diving thing, although I know plenty of people who have, and there's plenty that I do in my own life that's about not wasting. There's a we don't much
I don't like waste either, and we do way too much of it.
Yeah,
it's not good. It's not good, and it doesn't make a lot of sense on a real practical level, but it just shows the impracticality of the way we have things set up. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the base level philosophy of the East, I agree with, but then again, it comes down to methods, and the movie does a great job showing that. Like, yeah, the methods that they're doing here of being violent and taking out these extreme actions is horrible too. Like that doesn't do anything good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's firing on all cylinders here for me.
It is. I mean, it is a morally and I guess ideologically complex film because we were presented with the crimes of the capitalist corporatist system, with all this consumerism, with this waste, with this ignorance, people living in, sort of a dissociated, disconnected state from anything natural, being very, very wasteful. And then we see the opposite of all of that, so we see these anarchist activists, living in a communal kind of collective scenario that they're not wasting anything. They're doing the dumpster diving and the squatting and all that kind of stuff.
Eating dead deer out of the woods.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Not going to find many people that'll go about and do that out there.
No, you wouldn't. But it's it's that whole ideology of of not being wasteful. And of not, I guess not buying into like any traditional notion of economics whatsoever, really, But the nuances is what I'm getting at because we see I guess we see the pros and cons of both sides, and in many ways this is kind of like a left-right thing as well because I guess they, the world that Sarah comes from would represent the conservative, I guess, right-wing kind of, worldview and mindset.
I believe so. Again, she's working for a corporation. She's a Christian. Pretty right-leaning identity.
Well, she behaves very conservatively in general, And,
conservative, definitely, yeah.
And, and with the East representing the, the anarchist left-wing, side of things. And so we see that the benefits, all the pros and cons of each side, and that with the conservative side, there's more stability. They've got, I guess, more comfort. They've got, I guess stability and comfort would probably be, the most attractive things there. But on the other hand, they're completely disconnected from nature. They're wasting. They don't question anything, etc. And then you've got, the other side of the story, with the East and.
You know what I thought the other night, it's just coming back to me now, is that the sort of bohemian mindset fits into both the the establishment and the counterculture here, the left to right and all that, where the members of the East are very much bohemian, and they use their game of spin the bottle to show that, you spin the bottle, you do something, you got the girls kissing girls, stuff like that. That doesn't fly in conservative culture.
No.
So yeah, okay, they're bohemians, we get it.
Yeah.
But then in the establishment corporate culture, I mean, bohemian in the sense where you'll just do anything and break the rules as long as it continues to benefit you and profit you.
Well,
you don't care who gets hurt.
Do what thou wilt, isn't it, for them?
Yeah. It's also the cremation of care of Bohemian Grove, same damn thing.
Very good, yep.
It's all that same thing. So on both sides, the entrenched highest levels of the establishment and then the tramps squatting out in the woods are both bohemian in nature. So it's kind of like the Bohemians versus the Bohemians, and they're it's kind of shown that they're the movers and the shakers in the world. It's people of this mindset that just
yes,
I don't know.
Well, I suppose in one way you might call them extremists in their own way because they're both engaged in actions and behaviors and thought patterns which can be very, very damaging and which definitely have a lot to be questioned. And I suppose those are the people who are the movers and shakers of the world, the people who are really motivated, who really do take action. Because again, we come back to the East, who are ostensibly the opposite of everything that the conservative, straight world is about. And yet, although they are morally right in their objections, they are morally questionable in their actions,
Yes, exactly.
And so this is kind of juxtaposed with the, the conservative, mindset or demographic in this film, which is essentially the same thing. They would aspire towards moral righteousness, and they would spout moral righteousness, but their actions tell a different story. So both different, but also quite the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, again, this film is a true piece of art because it does that effectively. It shows the pros and cons of both sides. It shows like the realistic situation we're in, living in this world, where it's not just like it's this way or it's that way. You got to look at things in a nuanced sense, and you got to be careful with your allegiances because you get in with a certain group, they're gonna bring you down if you don't object when you need to. That's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know. Anything? What else do you have, Adam? I mean, this is such a good film. I could talk quite a while. Do we want to start up the Brit Marling fan club now and just say how great she is? Should we just go for that?
Yeah. I am a fan. I have to say, I'm a big fan of Brit Marling. I think she does really well. Prolific, both in writing and acting, and I think she was perfect for this film for the reasons I outlined before. And the particular facial, sort of inflections, she
can do a lot with just like the look on her face or like a certain stare.
Yeah, there's certain expressions and certain inflections which tell a lot about this character and the inner conflict, and I think that comes out in other films that she's been in as well. Where you're looking at someone who's a little bit lost and a little bit conflicted on the inside, but is never really going to let you in and tell you what's happening. There'll always be a mystery to you.
Yeah, very good.
I think she did that fantastically, but what else?
She did, and I was telling you, I read a few quotes of hers, again, just off IMDb, but I like a lot of what she said. She said, there's not enough women doing things in the business, in entertainment, and there need to be more women making things on their own terms and just, showing, again, all different body types, all different sorts of different roles that women can have, and not just this cookie cutter crap that Hollywood has been churning out for years and years and years. And I think she's doing that, and it's effective, and I say more power to her. I enjoy seeing this kind of thing actually happen. It's a good thing.
It is, and she's young too. She's only in her early 30s, and so she's already done a few really, really good films. I'm talking about films she's starred in and written too, so she's definitely on the up and up, and, hopefully she'll influence, the people that she's around in a positive way, moving forward into the future, Yeah.
So it's official. The Brit Marling fan club just started up. If you want to join, send $5 and you'll get a special little badge. Send it to my P.O. box. We'll get things started. I'll be the treasurer. You can be the president, Adam.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. Well, I don't know. What do you think, Aaron? Do you think we wrapped up here for today, or is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, that's about it. Again, a good movie, subtle, nuanced indie. Another indie film. We tend to like these indie films. They really come through.
Yeah, I mean, just the depth, the character development depth, the nuance, the things that are said without actually being spoken. These are the things that I appreciate most in film, and I think that indie films do that because they're not, they're not worried so much about winning over a mass audience. This is for people who have got the time and the patience and the interest to actually watch the film and try and figure it out and be engrossed in it. Whereas, so many other mainstream films, we've reviewed some truly terrible films on this show.
We have.
And the reason that they're so terrible is because everything is exposited. It's exposited.
It's done for the numbers. It's done
for the numbers.
Rake in big numbers in terms of viewers, in terms of money, in terms of just and to do that, there's all sorts of demands placed on. Like, okay, you got to dumb it down, you got to make it easy to understand. So again, more dialogue that just explains what you're doing for no reason.
Well, it's just everything's explained. I mean, it's just the whole thing is just very, very basic script running throughout the entire film, where absolutely everything that happens is explained to you. And
got to have more action.
Yeah, explosions and explanations.
Explosions, yeah. Got to have that love interest going. You got to, do all sorts of cornball stuff there. And
well, good films, I think, will have that too. I mean, this film has a love interest thing.
This had that too, but the way they do it, the way they do it is just like, okay, boy meets girl, and this is how it always happens. Like, I don't know.
She didn't save the world and get the cute guy at the end. It didn't work out like that, which would be a Hollywood rendering of the story,
Exactly. So. Yeah, her love interest actually goes a complete separate way, and she doesn't.
And she learns that he's not what she was looking for. That she was seduced by him. She was wooed by his presence and by her conversion to his ideology. That she was very, very seduced by all of this. And then, but when she actually came to know the character and tested this character as to what his true convictions were and where he stood on things, and he was essentially a narcissist.
Yeah. And of course, the love interest between her and her initial boyfriend wasn't there at all anyway. So that was just, I felt really bad for the boyfriend, actually.
Yeah, because he was such a nice guy as well.
Yeah, he was. It's like, this guy is like, I don't know, it's just kind of sad to see that guy.
Well, it was sad, but I will say one thing, and this is not necessarily a criticism, but more an observation, and that's that perhaps I think, because we talked about the film being written and starring a female, and you were talking about the differences between it, the way males do it. I think that this may have been pandering to female audiences to some degree, because this is something that comes up over and over again in films that are directed at women, is there always has to be two love interests. There always has to be a conflict between the boyfriend and the love interest.
For women, it's about picking which guy is the right one.
Exactly. So
that's what they're doing. So it makes sense. Yeah.
Well,
there you have it.
Look at any film that contains a female protagonist, and there's never just simply one love interest. There's always two, and there's always a struggle and a conflict all the way through the film as to what one she should choose. The nice guy who's safe, or the bad boy, who's not so safe but exciting. That's standard stuff. So
Yeah, so any young men that happen to listen to this podcast, take notes on these films made by women. Maybe you'll learn something. If it gets all too confusing, relax. It'll be all right. It's no big deal. Yeah. You'll be fine out there. Just be careful.
Yeah. Well,
don't get too attached to spaghetti and meatballs. You'll be fine.
Yeah. And if you do, then at least don't cook it in a can.
Make it from scratch. Make your own noodles. That'll really, if that doesn't impress a woman, I don't know what's going to do it. Making your own pasta, that's hard to do.
I tell you what, this podcast ended up being a little bit like spaghetti in the end. I just got to probably put that out there. This has been a bit of a, it's probably one of the messier podcasts we've done so far. We had to stop it a few times, and I've just been spinning.
We had to throw each other out of the ceiling, see if we'd stick.
Yeah.
when we fell off, we knew that we weren't ready yet. Fell off at the ceiling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not quite ready yet.
Not quite al dente. No. And you know what? I think we're now getting to the point where we're maybe slightly overcooking the pasta because it's getting soggy and soft.
Yeah, it's well past the point of sticking to the ceiling now.
Yeah.
Oh, slimy pasta is disgusting. Oh, God. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sticking with us, all the listeners that made it this far. I always want to throw out congratulations to people who make it this far because it's
forget
it's
the
a cool
audience.
thing.
I want congratulations that I made it this far. Screw them. Where's my medal?
Oh my gosh. Between the Brit Marling fan club and the spaghetti references constantly, we really did it this time.
Yep.
But yeah, check out our website, tmpodcast.com. You can subscribe to us there. We're on all sorts of stuff: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Play. We have a YouTube channel now.
We do.
Anything we want to say about that?
Well, I am getting some progress done on uploading the archive. So, same as we kind of tuned in, last time on this one. It was, I think I'm up to about episode 10 now. So we've got like 30 something, almost 40 episodes to upload. But, it's slow, but it's getting there. And, for now, it's probably not going to be that interesting to an existing audience. But what we will do is we will start posting the YouTube videos on the website. And I will also link that up in probably on Twitter as well. We've got our Twitter account. You better be subscribing to that because that's important information feed right there. So be sure to do that. Yep. And covers it. We're Themes Memes is our username on Twitter if you want to find us. Themes Memes. Yeah. And if you fancy searching for it on YouTube, it's just Themes and Memes Podcast. So you can find it that way and get the video versions of what we're doing. Yeah. Share those videos around. Send them out on your own social media. If you have social media, send it out. Or if you email the show to people or you just talk to people about the show you think might be interested. Hey, it's a movie review. People like to talk about movies. They might like it. And a big thank you to the person who is actually uploading it, or who has been uploading our stuff to YouTube for like a couple of years now. I didn't actually know about that until very recently. So big props to whoever that is. I think there's a couple of people doing actually. That. There's a Matrix Cutter is one of them, and there's somebody else. Matrix Cutter, I know them. Yeah. Yes, that is helpful. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. I suppose that's it. We have some ideas for reviews coming up. I don't know if we want to disclose them or not, but they're going to be good, right? Yeah, they are going to be good. We've got guests coming. We've got ideas for films and topics of discussion. We've got more videos on YouTube coming, and we also are finally getting some work done on the documentary that we promised everybody a year ago. Yeah. So that's how it goes. That's how it goes. People didn't come to expect this. Well, interesting. 20th of September. Today is 20th of September. I just looked at the clock. That was the day that I came to LA last year. I just realized. Whoa! That. Yeah. Oh my gosh! There you have it. So exactly, that's what did it. Yeah, exactly 1 year ago today was when I came to Aaron's house and we did a little trip around LA. So that's interesting. Yeah, that was a good time. That was a good. That was a good time for me. That was time away for me because. They went to Florida. The rest of my family is away on a trip, so it's just me here. So that I gotta say that was a good little break for me. Yeah, we both nice little change of pace. We both had a holiday. We both had a holiday in our own ways, which was awesome. We went camping and did all kinds of weird, crazy stuff, and we got lots of footage that we're going to use in our documentary about Los Angeles and California and all the interesting things that have happened and do happen in that region of the world. So, entertainment industry, culture industry, military-industrial connections, all that good stuff. So, we'll be doing a short documentary, within the next month or two. We're actually starting work on it now, so people can look forward to that as well. So take care. We'll see you next time. And great to talk to you again, Adam. I'll talk to you soon, too. Yeah, a lot of fun, Aaron. Catch you next time. Today's episode of Themes and Memes was recorded on the 20th of September, 2016.